Hi, in this video, we will talk about what is authentication and what are the different types of authentications available in REST APIs. Okay, so first we'll see what is authentication. So authentication is the process of verifying the identity of the user. So we already discussed in detail about authentication authorization in our previous video. If you did not watch, you can go and watch what is the difference between authentication, authorization also we discussed. Okay, but at a high level, authentication is the process of a user, system or application attempting to access or perform an action. Authentication is the process of verifying the identity of the user or system or application attempting to access or perform an action. So if you talk about in the context of REST APIs, in the context of REST APIs, authentication, in the REST APIs, authentication is essential to ensure that only authorized entities can access or manipulate resources. Only authenticated entities can access or manipulate the resources. Okay, so various authentication mechanisms. Okay, there are various authentication mechanisms exist to secure REST APIs. Okay, so there are various authentication mechanisms exist to ensure secure APIs. So why different types of, we are just discussing various authentication mechanisms. Then why so many? Okay, so why different types of authentications? Because, so why different types of authentications? Because security requirements, security requirements and use cases can vary significantly across different applications. Security requirements and use cases. When you talk about any application, you will talk about the applications, right? So the security requirements and use cases can vary significantly across different applications, systems and scenarios. So security requirements and use cases may change to your applications or systems and scenarios. So the choice of authentication method or process, you can say method. So authentication method depends on so many factors. Factors such as security needs, ease of implementation, the nature of application, and user experience considerations. User experience considerations. So why different types of authentication? It purely depends upon the security requirements and use cases. So how you can select a particular authentication? It depends upon the factors such as your security needs, how easy you can implement that, what is the nature of your application, and user experience, all these things you will consider. Then you can choose one of the authentication and you can implement in your application. So there are n number of authentications. We'll see few. So basic authentication, digest authentication, preemptive authentication, bearer token authentication, OAuth2 1.0 and 2.0 authentications, API key authentication, JWT authentication. JWT means JSON Web Token, certificate based authentication, OpenID authentication. So these many types of authentications are available. So you can choose any one of these according to your requirement. Okay. So we'll see few points about each and every authentication. So when you talk about basic authentication, digest authentication, preemptive authentication, these three are very similar with slight changes internally. You cannot see outside, but internally there is a slight change. Okay. So when you talk about basic authentication, sends credentials. Okay. What is that? Username and password in the request headers. Okay. So you're talking about APIs, right? So it sends the credentials in the request headers. It uses base 64 encoding for credential security. Okay. It uses base 64 encoding for credentials security. And vulnerable. Okay. It is vulnerable to eavesdropping. Means eavesdropping if not used over HTTPS. If you use only HTTP, there is a chance of vulnerability. Okay, you cannot trust. That means this is not that security. Okay. So when you talk about digest authentication, it is very similar to basic authentication. So it challenges the client with a unique value. Okay, it challenges the client with a unique value. So it requires the client to hash the credentials, comma, challenge and other data. So in the digest authentication, it requires some hashing. Means when you talk about the digest authentication, it is more secure than your basic authentication. Okay. So this is more secure than basic authentication. Basic authentication as it does not send plain text passwords. Plain text passwords. So it will encode in different hashing techniques using. Okay. So that is what digestive authentication. And you talk about preemptive authentication. Okay. So it's very similar to your basic authentication. So it proactively sends credentials with every request, regardless of server challenges. Challenges means it's asking. Okay. Whether the server asks or it will not ask, in both the scenarios, preemptive authentication will send credentials for each and every request. Okay. Useful in scenarios where the server may not always challenge the client, but expects credentials with each request. Okay. So this is preemptive authentication, means for each and every time you will send the credentials with regardless of whether the server asks or not. Okay. So when you talk about the bearer token authentication, so when you talk about bearer token authentication, So it involves sending a token in the authentication header. It will not send any credentials, it will send a token. Okay. So commonly used token-based authentication systems, like OAuth 2.0. Okay, basically in OAuth 2.0, you will provide the token. And the token is usually obtained through a separate authentication process. You will not simply get the token. For that, there is a separate authentication process. Once you complete that authentication process, the application will give the token. From then, you can use the token to perform your, means you access your APIs. Okay. So then what is OAuth 1.0 authentication? So it requires the exchange of credentials for access tokens and secrets. Okay. It requires the exchange of credentials for access tokens and secrets. It uses a combination of consumer key, consumer secret, access token, and access token secret. So it needs this much information. Okay. Because of that, it is more complex than OAuth 2.0 and less widely adapted. Okay. It needs this much of information. Because of that, it is very complex. So it is less used when you compare to OAuth 2.0. Okay. So when you talk about OAuth 2.0, it involves obtaining an access token to access the protected resources. So that is what the purpose, right? So it supports different grant types, such as authorization code, implicit resource owner password credentials. Resource owner password credentials and client credentials. So client credentials. So we'll see all these things once we take one example for authentication purpose in our next videos. So more streamlined and widely adapted when compared to OAuth 1.0. Okay, this is OAuth 2.0. So when you talk about API key authentication, it involves sending an API key in the request header. Okay, it involves sending the API key in the request header. It is commonly used for machine-to-machine communication. So machine-to-machine communication, and then it provides a simple way to identify provides a simple way to identify and authorize. Identify and authorize API clients. Okay, with the help of one API key, you can interact. Okay, so JWT, JSON Web Token. What is this? It uses a compact URL safe means of representing claims between two parties. Okay. Claims between two parties. Okay. So typically used for token-based authentication and authorization. So authentication and authorization. So it can contain information about the user, comma, the token expiration, you can say expiration, and other claims, some other information. Okay, this is JWT. Then certificate based. Okay, if you talk about certificate based, it involves exchanging digital certificates to authenticate clients or servers. It uses digital certificates, provides a higher level of security, okay, compared to simple basic mechanisms. Means you can say instead of basic, you can say username, comma, password mechanisms. Okay, so it provides higher level security when you compare to the basic authentication. So commonly used in enterprise environments. But commonly used in high level means big organizations kind of. Okay, so OpenID authentication, or you can say Connect. OpenID Connect. So it's built on top of OAuth 2.0. It builds on top of 2.0. Provides a standard for authentication. Provides a standard for authentication. Okay, so it enables clients to verify the identity of the end user and to obtain basic profile information. So, obtain basic profile information. So this is all about OpenID. So these are all the different types of authentications. So we have seen that what is authentication. Okay, so what is authentication and what is authentication in REST API? Why there are different types of authentication depends upon the security and ease of implementation, nature of application, and user experience, all these things. And there are different type of authentications: basic, digest, preemptive, bearer token, OAuth 1.0 and 2.0, API key, JWT, okay, certificate based, and OpenID Connect. So whenever you need, according to your security and your application nature, then you can pick any one of these things and you can implement that. Okay, so this is all about different type of authentications available in REST API. And in our upcoming videos, we will see how you can use this in your REST assured scenarios. Okay, so that's all in this video. Thank you for watching this video. Please like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for interesting updates. Thank you.